how did you fall in love with poetry? What was the first poem that you read that made you say, whoa, poetry can do things in me and to me? I want to tell you my story. So I'm sure I heard poetry, and I grew up in an old-fashioned Presbyterian church, so I sang hymns as a child, but I never thought of them as poetry. My introduction to poetry was in 7th grade. And we probably even read poetry in 6th grade, but in 7th grade, we read a poem called The Courtship of Miles Standish by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It was in a little blue Dover thrift edition. And it was so formative to me that I ended up going on to, in college, whenever people would ask for book recommendations, I would always recommend Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. When I got to grad school, I decided to do a whole semester of study where I read every single one of Longfellow's poems, which this is the collected Longfellow. It turned out he wrote quite a few poems. And then I ended up doing my critical master's thesis and my PhD, and then another book after that on Longfellow. So you could say it had a real impact to me when my teacher, Mrs. Louise Luthi, who was a fantastic, very, very strict English teacher, but a fantastic one, she assigned me to not just read, but memorize just the first few lines of section 6. Thus for a while he stood, and mused by the shore of the ocean, thinking of many things, and most of all of Priscilla. And as if thought had the power to draw to itself like the lodestone, whatsoever it touches, by subtle laws of its nature, lo, as he turned to depart, Priscilla was standing beside him. Now, this isn't the Charge of the Light Brigade. This isn't even the Psalm of Life. Let us then be up and doing. But this is a little snippet of a narrative. Why did this have such an impact on me? Well, The Courtship of Miles Standish is a classic love triangle. It's set in the community that comes over on the Mayflower. There's Priscilla, the most eligible maiden in town. I have a whole video on the Puritan heroine in Longfellow from years ago now on my channel. Go check it out. But basically, there's a love triangle. Priscilla, she's the most eligible girl in town. You have the stalwart captain, Miles Standish, who, he's no nonsense. He doesn't have time for love, but he thinks reasonably he should have a wife. And he has a best friend who's John Alden, who's sort of the sensitive preacher poet. And so Miles Standish says, hey, go woo Priscilla for me. You're a good friend. Go get me a good wife. And John Alden, oh yeah, I got to help my friend. But of course, he's smitten with Priscilla, but he can't say anything. And so he's gone and made his suit of love to Priscilla. Priscilla says, why don't you speak for yourself, John? And kind of turns him out. And he doesn't know what to think. And, Miles Standish gets mad. Hey, I thought you were going to woo her for me. And, no, she kicked me out. And so John is kind of walking around thinking, what do I do? What do I do? Thus, for a while, John, stood and mused by the shore of the ocean, thinking of many things, and most of all of Priscilla. And it's those two lines in particular that got me. This image of a man who's standing in nature, whose head is swirling with many things, but there's this woman at the center. Something in my 7th grade heart really connected with that. I think poetically, the next couple lines are more interesting, though. And as if thought had the power to draw to itself like the lodestone whatsoever it touches by subtle laws of its nature, lo, as he turned to depart, Priscilla was standing beside him. So it's this kind of wonderful narrative moment of kind of the man in nature meditating on the beloved, a wonderful extended metaphor. Thought is like the lodestone, like the magnet, which has the power to draw its object to itself. Like a magnet can pull its object to itself, thought was working like that, or it was as if thought was working like that. And then he turns and, whoa, she's there. This romantic moment, both the man musing and, oh no, she's there, what do I do? This is the first moment that I realized what literature could do. and the power that it could have. And, I was in 7th grade, of course, thinking about girls and, pretty words. This wasn't the despair of existence, or, to be perfectly honest, this wasn't, some high religious meditation. It was a boy-girl thing. What I didn't know at the time, and what I've spent a lot of time thinking about later in my career, is this isn't just a good picture of a man meditating, a good, narrative moment, a good metaphor. It's also really interesting metrically. Thus, for a while, he stood and mused by the shore of the ocean. 6 stressed syllables. So we have dactylic feet. Thus, for a while, he, and then stood and mused by the shore of the ocean, thinking of many things. That many is a trochee. So you have trochaic substitutions. Trochee is stressed, unstressed. Dactyl is stressed, unstressed, unstressed. So a mixture of 3-syllable and 2-syllable feet, dactyls and trochees, making up hexameter lines. I wasn't paying attention to that as a 7th grader, but now I see that there's a real masterful use of that. Also, even though there's variation between which feet are dactylic and which are trochaic, from the beginning from the first foot through the 5th foot, the 6th foot is always a trochee. So ocean, Scylla, lodestone, nature, side hymn, and that's following the Greek and Latin classical tradition of always ending with a 2-syllable foot at the end of a line of dactylic hexameter. This is what got me hooked, guys. This was it. What was yours?